Okay, my name is Dennis Procopio. I am in San Diego, California, broadcasting from the headquarters of Man Up Life Coaching. My business has grown over the years. Um, I've been coaching men for nearly a decade, and while my YouTube channel isn't necessarily this big blown out thing, I make these videos for guys who are considering coming on board with one of our coaches to go through our program, which offers results for guys who are feeling stuck in their life and trying to get unstuck. Now, um, because we're a service for men exclusively, it's impossible to avoid the topic of gender. Gender distinction is baked into my brand. So let's talk about it. First off, I'm going to say that this is inspired by a conversation I had recently on a podcast that was being hosted by a guy by the name of Rob Gorski. He has a podcast called The Autism Dad. Now, he is a super nice guy. He has 3 kids, all of them with autism on the spectrum, and he's a single dad. So he's in a, he's mom and dad. He's in a very nurturing role. Personally, I have one son with autism. He's moderate to severe, and he also has a chondroplasia dwarfism. My household is different, however, since my son Bennett has a household with mom and dad and no siblings, so he gets a lot of attention, and it's divided between mom and dad, who both have pretty traditional gender roles. Now, in our conversation, he said, so, what would you say to the listening audience about some of the sort of typical characteristics of men in the way they process emotion and argue and just generally behave, and women in the way they do this? Now, immediately, it occurred to me, we're getting into some pretty nasty territory here, because gender identification is a hot button topic. You have those people who believe that gender is polarized, and there are manly men and effeminate women, and these people represent what a man and a woman is supposed to be, according to whatever source they're getting their information from, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Torah, whether it's the Quran, wherever it is that they're getting the information that says, this is how men are supposed to be, this is how women are supposed to be. There are these do's and don'ts. As we know, if we look at life and if we look at nature, we see that it's very evident that there is a spectrum. Just as our kids are on the autism spectrum, there's also obviously a gender spectrum. This is so slippery. I really don't love talking about this, but I feel obligated to talk about this. When I came on his show, with the intention of speaking to the average guy in his listening audience, I said average guy, okay? Statistically, the average guy who is in a traditional relationship with an average woman, and they are in the family way and are pretty close to the median for what their traditional roles are. So I shared with him that the guys that my business tends to target are guys who respond well to the language of John Gray's Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which is a book which was pretty popular in the 90s. I'm 50. I was in my 20s when this book was out. I was in a relationship, and I found the book to be useful and relatable for working out some of the communication issues that I was having with one of my partners, and then later with another one of my partners, and then later with another one of my partners, and it hit me. I think this guy might be onto something. So after I put that messaging out there, I thought about it and I thought, I should probably follow up with a caveat that says, while the message that I'm putting out there is true specifically for the people that I typically work with, this is not a one-size-fits-all sort of blanket that we can throw over humanity and say, this is how gender works. I feel an obligation to put this messaging out there because otherwise I'm ostracizing or illegitimizing those people who are in some way are on a different place on the gender spectrum. And I'll get into this gender spectrum thing, and don't get all fucking pissy with Merca. Just hear me out before you go judging me on this, okay? If you're all the way on the left and you're some feminist who already hates me because I'm a 50-year-old white male, hear my story before you judge me. If you're some American, the eagle in America, then the liberals, just before you judge me, just listen to what I'm saying. You might be surprised. I might be the missing link. All right. So I'm going to first share something that I wrote for my listening audience, and something that was very much appreciated by my listening audience because of who they are. Then I'm going to spin around and I'm going to say, that having been said, ... Okay. So the piece is 4,000 characters, 500 words. I should be able to breeze through this thing in about 4 minutes. It says, be a man, advice for guys dealing with so-called toxic women. Hey there, everyone. Today's post is inspired by a recurring theme in my coaching sessions, namely a wife or girlfriend who complains that she's unhappy and either directly or indirectly blames the guy, typically using scathing language, posturing, and tone of voice clearly designed to evoke a strong emotional reaction. And then I say parenthetically, before I launch into this, I'd like to offer a disclaimer. This is written for mainly straight or cis, family-oriented guys who are binary in their interpretation of gender attributes. This message is not intended to attack, judge, or ostracize those whose gender identification is out of alignment with this worldview. Okay, so put it right there. Okay, so that said, let's talk. As a general rule, the guys I work with are primarily thinkers. Notice I said primarily thinkers, meaning that this is what they do first. They think first. Problem solvers. When they talk, it's to communicate information, data. If they express a problem, it's because they're looking for a solution. And by the way, a lot of them are in IT or engineers or project managers, data analysts, data scientists. So I'm being very literal here. By contrast, the women they share space with typically are primarily feelers, experiencers. When they talk, it's to share a sensation, a mood. If they express a problem, it's because they're looking for empathy. So there's one glaring difference that's bound to make any effort at communicating a sensitive topic a perfect storm. Let's further complicate the dynamic. More often than not, he would prefer to retreat when he's feeling upset, preoccupy himself with some mindless activity, and come out of hiding only when he's had enough time to process his inner dialogue and de-escalate the perceived threat. Now, examples I give for this are mowing the lawn, going into the garage and tinkering, anything that wax on, wax off, painting the broadside of a barn, etc. She, on the other hand, not only wants, but literally needs to talk. This is how she processes her feelings. And the longer she has to wait, the more the pressure builds for her. And with it, the intensity of her discomfort, which parenthetically I'd like to add, is why she will typically come barging in and start talking. And he will say, "Not now, I can't talk about this now." And she'll say, "You don't want to talk about this? What, you don't care? This isn't important to you?" And a shitstorm ensues. This is the classic dynamic that's in the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. It's very, very popular. One of the challenges for us as guys, and again, parentheses, this type of guy, is understanding her experience, since we have no standard for comparison. In session, I usually just say, look, it's like this. She has this feeling of terror inside of her, feelings she hasn't sorted out: anger, fear, jealousy, imposter syndrome, sadness, loneliness, frustration, exhaustion, you name it. It's this big bubbling cauldron of shit that needs to come out. And as weird as it may seem, she's basically hoping for you to offer to hold her hair while she pukes all of this crap up into your lap, precisely because you love her and she trusts you to do this without judging her or attacking her and making her feel bad about it. And when I say this, dudes look at me with their head cocked like a dog, like, really? And I say, yes, really. That's why she says you don't listen, because you don't get even this, what I'm telling you. And so in session, being guys, they take out their notebooks and start writing this stuff down, which is fine, but there's no secret formula here. Just let her talk. It's really that simple. Just let her talk. Just let her talk. Just let her talk. Look at her face, mirror her expressions. I have a guy, he works for Fortune 200 companies. He said, everything that you're saying to me, I've learned in consulting. These are consulting techniques. I don't know why it hasn't occurred to me to do this in my own relationship. Mirror her expressions. Put away your devices and use body language that suggests active listening rather than slumping, sighing, or seeming distracted. Pretend to give a shit like you would if you were trying to get laid. I mean, and really just think about it. You're sitting in a bar and she's, and I know that could seem offensive, but that's really what it feels like when you're a dude sitting in a bar and you're out there and you're trying to go home with some person that you find attractive, and she's like, and you're going, yeah, okay. You're on your best behavior. If you get into a relationship, I guarantee about a year or two years down the line, she's going to be doing that same thing, and you're not going to be listening. She's going to be thinking, what the fuck happened? You were such a good listener when we met. No, he wasn't. He was just kind of doing what he knew he needed to do, just like you were real sexual in the beginning because you were doing what you knew you needed to do. There was an exchange there, and there's nothing wrong with that negotiation, right? But let's keep it real. You were giving a little and he was giving a little, and maybe it wasn't necessarily, with these two people, mind you, okay? these two types of people. So yeah, pretend to give a shit like you would if you were trying to get laid. She'd rather you actually cared, but she'll take whatever you have to offer as long as you don't invalidate her, because she really, really, really wants to get it out. And so my guys will say to me, all right, Dennis, but bro, some of the stuff she says, man, it's like really, really not cool. And I say, yes, I know. Again, she's not being literal. She's communicating in a way that is designed to make you feel what she feels. It's what I call smell the milk. As an aside, I had a friend of mine, she had a pretty good idea that she was molested by her dad when she was a kid, but she wasn't sure of it. It was more of an intuition. One thing she knew, her dad grossed her out. He grossed her out. His mustache grossed her out. Everything kind of about him grossed her out. And there was this one moment when she was around 10 years old, and they were both eating ice cream at like a Dairy Queen. And she realized they both took a bite of their ice creams at the same time. And she realized that they both had the same taste in their mouths, and she threw up. In a weird way, that's kind of what is happening when she's using non-literal language. She wants you to taste what she tastes. She wants you to feel what she feels. Why would I want to smell the milk if it stinks? Because I want you to share the experience I'm having. I want you to be willing to have the experience with me. And so I suggest to guys, this thing ends with, if you learn how to listen without reacting, offer her opportunities to talk before the shit hits critical mass, it'll get easier. You'll both be much happier. Basically, don't offer advice. Don't defend yourself. Don't invalidate her in any way. Now, again, I'm keeping an eye on the time. There's a certain percentage of the listening audience that hears this is like, "Ooh, preach. He's saying real stuff there." Okay. So for you people who identify with this, I'm glad I was able to give you this offering. You are the people who could probably read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and very literally the men could say, yes, I'm over here in the man camp. And the women could say, and I'm over here in the female camp. But just like everything else in life, it's not as easy as polar opposites. It is a spectrum. And we have to be fair. So the reason that I want to revisit this gender topic is because I don't want to ostracize the men who... There's a certain division of feminine and masculine energy in every single one of us. Don't pretend you haven't noticed it. It's a fact. Even your most double Y chromosome, knuckle dragon, silverback, freaking troglodytic, freaking ape man out there, barbarian, still has what we could call feminine energies. Even the most absolutely positively super girly princess out there still has what we might call masculine energies. Somewhere in the middle are those interesting people who are sort of clearly gender neutral. We all share this world together, and we all know what we're talking about there. So the point of this is to say, you may be a guy who reads Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and says a lot of the behaviors that are being attributed to women, that's kind of how I act. That's kind of how I process. That's kind of how I feel. For instance, I'm a dude who needs to talk about my problems. And I'm in a relationship with a woman who needs to go into her cave and needs to have quiet time and needs to preoccupy herself with, wrenching on a tractor engine or whatever before she comes to the, realization that something's bothering her and it's an emotion or a feeling. And she needs to work it out in private before she's able to have that communication. You may be two men in a relationship, and of the two of you, one may be more possessed of feminine energies and attributes, and one may be more possessed of typically classically masculine attributes. You may be two women in a relationship, same thing. Come on, we've all seen the relationship with the guy who's like, I'd like you to be my wife. And you're like, whoa, Jack, your wife? Damn, I was sure you were gay, right? Or, so this is my husband, you're like, okay, that's all cool. No judgment. And then, of course, there is this world of gender identification that has recently been opened up, so much so that it's caused problems for people who are feeling a little threatened because they feel that stereotypical, man, woman gender roles are under attack. I just want to go on record saying, man, I'm a dude. I think I'm possessed of a good, strong man thing. But I do know that I have feminine energies as well. I'm very aware of that. I went to college for fine art, for fuck's sake. I don't want to say women are intuitive, men aren't. I don't want to say women are creative, men are, problem solvers. I don't want to say that. What I want to say is there is a masculine principle and a feminine principle in the universe. Gender is represented everywhere in our universe. These polarities, they're in your freaking car battery, dude. The yin yang is an expression of feminine and masculine energy. And in each, there is a representation of the other. I think that men should feel comfortable identifying with their feminine energies. I think women should be encouraged to identify with their masculine energies. And I think we should all be open to and receptive to the idea that gender identity is a spectrum. With that having been said, I think it's also realistic to recognize that the majority, at least traditionally, of people out there calling themselves men and women and biologically presenting as men and women, there is a prototype, there is a standard. And so my disclaimer on my way out the door is, if I put anything out there that seems to suggest that this is a one size fits all gender codex, that's really not what I'm saying. I'm only saying that for my business, Man Up Life Coaching, I typically deal with guys who are more on the knuckle dragger end of the spectrum and tend to be thinkers, and tend to be a little out of touch with their emotions, and tend to find themselves in relationship with women who are a little bit more on the feely side and are pretty stereotypical in that they are the ones who need to talk to process their emotions and complain that he's out of touch with his feelings and that he's a poor listener and that miscommunication and mutual invalidation ensues. And my job is to help them to communicate. So we're out of time. Hopefully this was interesting for you. Again, it's a hot topic, but feel free to say something in the comments if you agree and like what I'm saying, or if you want to throw me some haterism, that would be awesome. Great for SEO. So if you want to fire some shit posting at me, bring it. Okay. If you like what I'm doing here and you want to hear more, like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.